Hi, everyone. We're back for part 2 of our program here. I'm pleased to welcome back Deb, and I'd love to welcome Alison from Intuit, and I'll let you two sort of take it over from here.
Great, thank you so much, Becca. That earlier session was great, and I know that you're going to have a recording of our session with Lisa Runquist, where we were talking about Henry Darger. So I'm excited for that and to share that with more audiences than we're able to tune in this morning. And now we're going to take a little shift in perspective. Once again, I'm Deb Kerr. I'm the president and CEO at Intuit, the Center for Intuitive and Outsider Art, right here in Chicago. But one of the things I like to say about Intuit is that Chicago was a city that early on embraced this special genre of ours. And it's one of the reasons Intuit is here in Chicago. So many people were enthusiastic about this genre and came together to form Intuit. So please come and visit. If you're not in town, come when you can. If you are in town, let us know, make an appointment. You can come in and see the work. And we do have a whole lineup of special programs. So we'll be talking more about those, I'm sure. But right now, let me also welcome our Chief Curator, Alison Amick. And Alice, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to appreciate outsider art?
Sure, and hello everyone, and thank you for joining us here today at Intuit. My name is Alison Amick. I'm a curator here at Intuit, and my journey towards an appreciation for this genre began in graduate school in a seminar that I took on African American art history. And in that class, we learned about the exhibition, Black Folk Art in America. And I know that that exhibition actually really inspired many collectors here in Chicago to develop an interest in the genre. And so at that point, I sort of began thinking about many of the artists that we learned about in that context of this exhibition, and started thinking more about the many artists who sort of have created work kind of on the fringes of that mainstream art society and world. And so that kind of cued my interest then, and I've been thinking about it sort of ever since. And I'm happy to be here today looking at the work that we have on view.
Great, thank you. So Alison, we have a wonderful exhibition up right now, Outsider Art, the collection of Victor F. Keane. And we originally opened this exhibit back in February, and I'm going to post a link in the chat in a few moments with a virtual tour that people can go and take of the exhibition, or they can go to our website and see a virtual tour. But what was your thought process when you began installing this exhibition back in February when it originally opened?
Great, and thank you for posting those photos soon to the link. I'm going to share my screen for one of our, just one moment. Great, there we go. Thank you for the technical assistance. There was much to consider when thinking about this original installation. Victor Keane is an important Philadelphia-based collector of outsider art. His collection is extensive and includes many examples by important artists in the field. And so he began collecting in the 1970s, so he's been collecting for some time. His collection actually began with cattle and radios, and you can see on the screen an exhibition in one of Intuit's smaller galleries that features some of the radios from his collection. And when we opened the exhibition in February, we thought, well, this isn't really typically something that we would exhibit, but it'd be sort of an interesting collection to feature for perhaps the first month or two, thinking about his own interest in collecting and sort of how he came to the genre. And so you can see on the screen two of the examples from the original installation. I know there's so many more that we have on our website, but one thing that I spent a lot of time thinking about was how to exhibit such a diverse body of work, stylistically, range of artists from United States, Europe, covering a variety of time frames in our own space, which if you've been to Intuit, our main gallery is essentially a large rectangle, and then we have sort of a similar space in the back. So how to be able to create something that someone both with knowledge of the genre, but someone walking into the space would be able to sort of flow through and kind of understand things visually as they moved through the space. The exhibition actually began at the Sangre de Cristo Museum in Pueblo, Colorado, and their space is considerably larger than what we have at Intuit. So the number of works that were available were significantly more than what our galleries could comfortably hold. And so that's how I began kind of thinking about the space in terms of kind of what would the experience of the viewer be like. And one thing that we did was to think about construction of walls and their placement to be able to create some intimate moments as opposed to just sort of walking into a space and seeing everything all at once in a way that might not create a pleasant experience.
So, Alison, I know you weren't able to incorporate all of the works available from Victor in this original opening, but we had to recurate the work. You did the recuration of the work when after COVID happened, so that we could follow the Chicago guidelines for making this space work and keeping social distance. Did you incorporate additional works, or how did you make the decision to winnow down the selection even more? I know that was a difficult one.
It was it was difficult the first time, and even more sort of interesting and difficult the second time. These are some sort of action shots that you see on the screen here of Intuit space. It gives you a bit of a feel. When COVID hit and the museum closed, we immediately began thinking about what would it look like when the time came to reopen. And guidelines came out, there became sort of some knowledge about ways that museums and facilities could sort of safely reopen. And so what we did was really specific to our own facility, our own site. If you've been to Intuit before, you would perhaps recall entering into the museum, being greeted by a volunteer or a staff person, and perhaps checking in maybe once you'd already gone through that first gallery space. But with the inclusion of time ticketing, with desire for allowing people to come in and have space to safely congregate as they checked in, we came to the sort of a painful realization that we needed to allocate some of our own gallery space to create this setup, which also used one of the walls that we had as well. So this really cut out about a quarter of that front space. So the other thing that we took into account was sort of practical things like spacing between artworks, wanting the experience if someone wanted to come to Intuit during this time as sort of a place for solace and looking to have that be a pleasant experience where they wouldn't feel too close or too tight next to perhaps another guest. And thinking about also paring down the works, sort of the painful less is more from the perspective compared to the first installation. We wanted to provide opportunities for looking, and then when sort of creating some of the arrangements that had been done before, they seemed different, perhaps stressful or too vibrant. So wanting to create a sense of peace where our guests could come in and not be sort of overwhelmed visually, but kind of have time to make their way through the exhibition at their own pace, still being able to show these vibrant, colorful works, but being mindful of that guest experience going through the space. And so I'll show one more quick slide here, Deb. This is sort of the way we were able to modify, like where do we place our didactic with the inclusion of so much more signage? How could we share information? We had also, in the first iteration, had things like touch screens and some of those types of opportunities for guests to engage, which we removed and placed on our website, some of those materials instead. But here's one corner as well. So thinking about relationships between artworks, how they might uncover different connections. It's a time that we really wanted to start thinking about looking at artwork. And so what does that mean to take the time and actually devote one's energy to deep looking? And we formed a digital engagement team, which is myself, Paula Santos, our senior manager of learning and engagement, and our marketing manager at the time. And I really began to think about how could we also leverage these works of art in this new sort of digital environment, first when we were closed, but even now that people have various levels of comfort with traveling or with going indoors to different institutions. So here you can see one corner of our current iteration, James Castle, Yoakum, Strobel, for example. Here in the back, you see some works by George Widener, William Hawkins, and some of these works had originally been placed together and sort of transitioned on one of our long walls in the front gallery, but this created an opportunity for even more kind of intimate, kind of focused moments, this thinking about the city and various interpretations of the cityscape, for example.
You know, Alison, one of the things that we talk about in the museum world is allowing guests to have a free-flowing experience and how most guests enjoy that. And of course, with the COVID guidelines, we did have to create this one-way traffic flow, which was not something we had done before.
That's right. That's right. We really did have to take that into account because even thinking about the configuration of our space before, it allowed for too much lack of clarity with circulation. And we didn't want sort of people having to dodge each other that would counter the effect that we were hoping to achieve in our space with sort of serenity and stillness. And I think the image you see now on the screen too with these 3 works by Ramirez is just a powerful example of just sort of this peaceful moment where one can really encounter 3 great works of art. And the first installation, the center work by Ramirez, the trains and tunnels, it was and is used as our key image. So it was really placed front and center with a few other works that had sort of a travel focus, but with sort of the loss of space and with wanting to think about, again, having these really focused moments and opportunities for quiet reflection and deep looking, placing them together was a really powerful opportunity before they'd been sort of split up. And so it also allowed us the opportunity to make space to do that. The idea that, you know, we can't show everything, so we'll just really focus on how to best show what we have and to create moments for those particular works.
This is really a spectacular wall for people who are fans of Martin Ramirez, and to see these 3 really incredible works together is definitely worth a visit, and it's so moving. I spoke with one of my students who was a first-time visitor to Intuit recently, and he felt like he had rediscovered Martin Ramirez all over again. So speaking of favorite artworks, you know, a lot of our guests come in and they have favorite installations or favorite pieces. What sort of feedback have you heard and gotten about the artworks or the tableau that are impacting our guests?
Sure, we've heard a lot of feedback, and both from our guests and then also from engaging teaching artists and scholars such as Lisa Runquist to participate in some of our online programs as well. So it's been interesting to see also what they have responded to. Anyone from Clementine Hunter, who you see this large, very dramatic piece, to Hawkins Bolden, to Elijah Pierce. Really, I think when someone who saw the exhibition in the first iteration has come back, they've been really surprised, even if maybe even if they're looking at the same work, they might not have noticed it the first time, which is, of course, I think one of the fascinating things about visiting exhibitions repeatedly is one does always notice new things. And I think that has been really rewarding from our own perspective as staff, having the opportunity to live with work for, you know, an extended period of time, and to really be able to take that time to look and to focus and think about the works on view. Oh, also, I think, Deb, we had the Intuit's Instagram Live. I'm reminded of that by seeing this wonderful sculpture.
Yeah, our teens are one of our favorite programs. They do a session with us in the summer. This summer, we found that some other museums were not going forward with their teen program, so we took more teens than we ever had before. But Ethan, one of our teens who had been with us, I think 5 summers, he started when he was his first eligibility and aged out this year, did a workshop on Instagram Live focused on the work of Calvin and Ruby Black. And here you have one of their possum trot figures named Renee. And she has been one of the most popular installations. People have enjoyed looking at pictures of her, coming to see her, and watching events like the Instagram Live event, which can be found on our YouTube channel. You remind me, Alison, about the interplay between some of these works, and you had the chance to change up that interplay a little bit between where you hung works together the first time around and where you hung works this time around. There's some really wonderful, I think, emotions and reactions that we can have when we think about these tableaux. Would you comment on that a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, it's really amazing, because I think each time you place a work of art next to another work, one notices different things, different things come to the forefront. I think, here would be one example, thinking about the landscape or home, real and imagined landscape. You can look and you can see just the different way that artists use paper, which may or may not come out as much to the forefront, depending on kind of how the works are arranged. So, for example, there was one large work by George Widener, which unfortunately I don't have an image of in this presentation, but I think it took several looks to really notice the delicacy of the paper and the way that it had been pieced together, and certain qualities really come out depending on what they're juxtaposed with. For example, this yokum on sort of beautiful landscape, the lines in the yokum, and then thinking about these lines in this strobel and sort of what are uncovered or what is left visible in the images of the 3 works on the right-hand portion of the screen. So it's been really a chance to think about sort of the deliberate choices that artists were made, and what you learn about one work of art when you're looking at another work of art, and sort of the relationship between them. We have so many interesting papers on view in this exhibition. You could just even go walk around the gallery and just be sort of overwhelmed by paper selection. For example, from envelopes to lined paper to sort of self-created paper, the cuttings, the surface edges. There's really a lot to look at. And one of our new programs, the One Night Stand, which is really hinging around the idea of taking the time to look at one work of art for one night by one artist, hence the fun title. And I encourage you to join one of our future programs, and I believe the recordings are available on the website. But I mean, what a luxury to be able to stand in front of a work of art and spend 15 to 30 minutes simply thinking about that work
and the artist and what their motivations were.
That's right.
Absolutely. So before we turn to the Darger Room, we're planning another. We absolutely have to thank Victor Keene, because we thought this exhibition would come and leave, but because of closures and because of COVID, we've been very blessed to be able to keep these wonderful elements of his beautiful collection on site. And we're going to be keeping more elements of his beautiful collection on site into the new year. We're going to do a focused exhibition of the work of George Widener, who generously gave his time to do an artist talk, which is also available on our YouTube channel, and on our website. But we are going to have an exhibition in winter and early spring of the works of George Widener. Alison, why George Widener, and what are your thoughts about his work?
Yes, well, George Widener, you can see one image of his here on the, describe it,
We can see your cursor. So we can
okay, great, right here. George Widener is an artist who Victor Keane has collected in depth, and when the original exhibition was on view in Colorado, there was a whole exhibition of George Widener's work. Now, our space, of course, being different, those works, several of them were incorporated thematically into the larger installation. But there, you know, going back to these sort of painful cuts, in thinking about the future, it seems like a wonderful opportunity to be able to highlight his work. When we think about our exhibitions, we often consider balance in our schedule. So 2019 had a heavy focus on works by living artists. And so 2020, we've had sort of a return to a kind of a broader look at the genre. And so we're looking forward to returning and really being able to take a deep look into George's work, many of them which are also quite large in scale. So we just did not physically have room for them. So we're planning on opening that exhibition in January, and look forward to speaking more with George and some of these works on view.
Super. So I'm going to turn to the Darger Room for a moment. We have some big plans, don't we, Alison, for the Darger Room in 2021. As you were commenting on works on paper, and one of the beauties of this genre is that many of these works are not on professional quality paper, they're on found paper. So conservation is always a challenge with works by artists in our genre. And I think that we have a particular challenge here in the Darger Room because some of the objects I was showing earlier, these are all on paper, but we also have these books I was showing earlier, these scrapbooks of Dargers, and they're all newsprint, which is notoriously fragile. And in 2021, thanks to support from the National Endowment of the Arts, we are going to be conserving the objects that are in this room. So that means that we're going to be taking down elements of the Darger Room. And what we've decided to do is to bring that process in front of our audience. We would need the adjoining gallery space anyway to stage our conservation works. And what we're planning to do is really open that up to the public to see that process. So Alison, help me address what are some of the challenges with conserving and preserving these fragile objects in the Darger Room?
There are many challenges. You've identified some of them. It's a range of materials. Many of them weren't necessarily in great condition originally when Darger they became part of his collection. There are, I believe you showed some of the notebooks, for example, or some of the binders with materials sort of collaged on, and newspaper cutouts of comics and so forth, just sort of pasted in. So clearly these were not done with archival preservation in mind. So the works are just very fragile is really the bottom line. You can hear just even seeing this, you can kind of get the sense of the fragility of what we're looking at. And the one thing that's so interesting about it too is thinking about sort of the life of these objects here at Intuit. They've been on view for so long, and this really important evocation of Darger's Room that went on view in, I think, around 2008. And so it's a really important and sort of big deal for Intuit to think about what does it mean to imagine this space really for the future projects related to the room. What should be conserved and how? Are there objects that should not be on view, or what is the best way to make the materials more accessible? Even what you just held up, you know, there's images on each of those pages or things that have been sort of scrapbooked in. You know, what do those look like? How do we make the materials accessible in a way that perhaps requires less handling? Not that these works are handled, but how can we kind of make what we have sort of not have a life of its own?
Right. I mean, just just having them here in the room, they're exposed to, you know, the air, and that's an issue for these objects. And this is a traditional collections challenge. The tension between preservation and conservation and access. So this is the registrar, the collection manager's traditional challenge, and we're going to be facing that. So what we'd like to do is actually bring this process out in front of the public, in front of our audiences, and have them help us think about not only the themes that we want to share going forward with a reimagined Darger Room, but what sorts of things would they want to maybe touch and hold. Obviously, we can't have people touching and holding the actual objects, but we don't want to have a complete room of replicated objects either. There's an incredible power by coming in and seeing, oh, this is Henry Darger's typewriter that he actually touched. Look at these incredible objects on his mantelpiece. Lisa was talking about some of these objects earlier, and the power of these this religious iconography, or the Jesus head that's sitting up on the German Shepherd figurine. So there's a real power to those objects, and so we want to find that right balance. I do want to take a moment here and acknowledge the original curators of this room who did such a spectacular job, Jessica Moss and Lisa Stone. Wonderful. It's a wonderful room, and it's been an amazing draw for guests from around the world, and we continue to answer questions about it. I will take just a pause here to mention that we recently digitized the microfilm that we had. Do you want to just comment on that briefly, Allison, and I'll put the link in the chat?
Great. Yes. We have a microfilm of Henry Darger's writings, and which could previously have been viewed on a microfilm film reader. And it's something that is often requested by guests or scholars wanting to come in and view the work. And so recently we were able to digitize it, which is exciting because the microfilm reader is sort of a dated, large piece of equipment, which it's time to move beyond. It's just not a practical way of viewing things anymore. And
we want to make it available, right? We want to make it available to people, right? We don't want to hide. We want to reach out.
Absolutely. And so Deb, I believe, will be posting the link. The manuscript is now posted in an online forum through the Illinois
State Library.
State Library. And so it is available for all to view. This is just the digitized copies of the microfilm, not necessarily.
So it's not a beautiful, clear image, and it is slow to load. In addition to let me see, I think I've got a note here. In addition to In the Realms of the Unreal, which is Darger's opus manuscript, his novel with the Vivian Girls, there's also Darger's Weather Reports, which I mentioned earlier, History of My Life, a Darger autobiography that he wrote, and Vivian Girls in Chicago. And all four of those documents in their rough form are available on now the Illinois State Library site. We're very pleased, and if you forget about it, the link is also on our website. So please enjoy those. So what are the concepts that we're going to explore next summer in terms of Darger themes, Allison?
Sure. What we're looking to do is to create three 1-month exhibitions that will explore different aspects of Darger's work and thinking, and also allow Intuit the opportunity to think about what are the stories we want to tell and how do we tell them, looking ahead to a sort of the opportunity for an expanded Darger experience, which right now we just don't have much room. There are wonderful interpretive materials and of course the room itself, but we're thinking about how can we expand that experience for future guests. And so the first exhibition that we're looking at will think about Darger as writer and reader, and will have the opportunity to really highlight the digitized version of the microfilm as well for our guests, which so many will be, I think, fascinated to see. And we'll look at sort of what Darger was reading, sort of the stylistic influences of his own writing, and so forth. Our second exhibition will focus on Darger's influences. This will both be looking at themes such as Lisa spoke so wonderfully on in the first part of the session on Darger, the influence of religion, gender, his interest in adoption, girlhood, and so forth, and also sort of the practicalities of his technique in terms of creating these images. Our collection consists of many source materials, coloring book pages, and so forth, some of the paint pods, which Deb showed earlier. So we'll look at sort of how he compiled these sources to create his own sort of brilliant compositions. And then the third exhibition will really look at the takedown of the Darger Room. So we're sort of opening up that process in a very safe and distanced way for guests to be able to see sort of what happens when artworks are cataloged or photographed. We need to use that space practically, like you were saying. So why not let one witness that and have a dialogue about conservation, or what is an archive, or what should Intuit be thinking about in terms of recreating an artist's home and studio space. So there's lots of interesting types of questions that we can ask and really have the opportunity to experiment with. So this sounds great in theory, but what's the experience of this in the gallery? Does it work? Do guests understand what we're wanting to convey? And so we'll also be exploring different multi-sensory opportunities, thinking about sound. We've done a little bit in that past with that. For example, in 2017, we did a whole year of exhibitions focused on Henry Darger. And in one exhibition, Henry Darger, Author Artist, we included the sounds of sort of a typewriter that would have been comparable to what Darger was using. So all of these aspects sort of add to that sort of holistic understanding and kind of experience of the artist and their work. So look forward to more in 2021.
Yes. And what are the dates of that, Alison?
We will be opening May to September of 2021.
Right. And I'm really excited about this aspect of not only Darger as an author and an artist, but Darger as a reader. So we do know that he had, that he was an avid reader of newspapers and magazines, hence all these cutouts that we have in these scrapbooks, but also that he had a collection of books, such as the Oz books, he had Peter Pan, he had Uncle Tom's Cabin. So these books about the fragility of life and childhood. So I'm excited to think about maybe having some of those books on hand, not his books, but versions of those books, so that people can be reminded that Darger was an avid reader. That's interesting to me. And I think we also want to delve more into the context of his times, his experiences with World War I, his Darger as an avid sort of Civil War buff, Darger as someone who was aware of things like the Korean War and the Vietnam War, and his interest in adoption. So all these topics leave us so much to explore. And I'm really excited about opening this up to our fans and our guests and Henry Darger enthusiasts to give us their feedback of what they're looking for. So we're doing well on time. I'm turning to the chat to see if we have any questions. Do we have questions from our audience about about the current exhibition, about our curation exhibition practices, about Henry Darger or the Henry Darger Room. Anyone have questions? So while we're waiting for questions to come in, Alison, you've been at Intuit how long now? Have you been here with us?
I have been here since February of 2016. So
yes. Okay. Yes. Great. Great. I'm thrilled that we found you and that you found us. What else are you looking forward to in terms of our curation practices and our collection practices moving forward? It might be worth a moment here to say that we have a wonderful collection ourselves. Right now we have Victor Keen's collection on view, but we also have a wonderful collection of art. And most of that collection has, I think all of that collection has come to us thanks to the generosity of outsider art enthusiasts here and around the world. We have a new piece that was just gifted to us from Hiroyuki Doi in Japan. And we love having this collection and being able to steward this for the public.
Yeah, absolutely. The mid portion of 2021 will be so interesting because sort of what we've described for Darger, we'll be doing a little bit of that with the permanent collection as well, meaning pulling works out, having the opportunity to look at them. Many of our works are located in an offsite storage facility. So we want to bring many works to Intuit, put them on view, and create a series of changing exhibitions about those types of relationships, sort of like what we've begun to do with Victor Keen, thinking about what do you notice or observe, or what sort of qualities about the artist and their practice or their life are highlighted depending on where they're placed. Because there's always a decision to be made about those relationships and sort of what to put on view, where, and how. And so that would be an exciting opportunity to also really think about Intuit. I believe it's a big anniversary for us as well.
It is. It's our 30th anniversary.
And to think about having a collection, which, because right now we don't have a space dedicated solely to the collection in a permanent manner, it will sort of remind people about our collection, also highlight works that we have, and be a good block for thinking about future displays of Intuit's collection and kind of being able to assess and work with our space, and also be able to open up that to the public as well. So it will be a really kind of experimental time from May to September. We're really looking to embrace that spirit of dialogue and trying things, and thinking about
bringing the viewer's perspective into what we're considering.
Absolutely. And just thinking about different stories that can be told in terms of artists or artworks, or figuring out sort of what we'd like to highlight with what we have.
Yes.
So
yes,
we're looking forward to 2021.
We have a question about what sort of relationship does the Darger Room have with the documentary? And I think I'm aware of at least 3 documentaries, but I'm going to assume you're talking about the Jessica Yu documentary, which is the most widely known one. And I think it is important to note that as this genre over the last 30 years has become increasingly popular and has become more accepted among the mainstream art world in terms of its legitimacy and recognition, that there has been increasing research done on the artists that fall into this genre. Some beautiful work done by the Smithsonian, Leslie Umberger on Bill Traylor, for instance, and the beautiful film Chasing Ghosts by Jeffrey Wolf. And just like with Bill Traylor, increasing scholarship on Henry Darger. If you missed the session that we did an hour earlier with Lisa Runquist, that recording will be linked on the Intersect website, and you can learn more about the evolving scholarship with Henry Darger. So I think that's a wonderful documentary. We have shown pieces of it to our teacher fellowship classrooms, as classrooms of school children have come here to study Darger. You can also see on our website a Henry Darger resource kit. So if you're a teacher or if you're a parent with home learners, we have a wonderful teaching kit for both middle school and high school students, different activities in each of those to share more about Henry Darger through materials that have been approved by scholars, embedded by scholars, and supported by the Terra Foundation for American Art. So I think that one of the most interesting things about Henry is that we are continuing to delve more deeply into the sophistication of his artwork as that artwork becomes more recognized around the world in its importance. So yes, kudos to that documentary by Jessica Yu, but other works as well. I'm also aware of some music that's being composed in Henry's honor, and maybe I think just this month is being unveiled at the Musée d'Art Moderne in the city of Paris, which has a large number of Darger works. And we also have a traveling exhibition right now, Chicago Calling, which is kind of the story of Chicago's embracing outsider artists. And it has just closed at the Collection de l'Art Brut, which also has a number of Henry Darger works in Lausanne, Switzerland, and will be opening in mid-January at the Outsider Art Museum in Amsterdam. So we're really proud of that traveling exhibition, which is telling kind of the story of Chicago and outsider art through the lens of 10 artists, including Henry Darger. Any other questions? I think we're going to wrap up. If not, Alison, thank you for sharing your thoughts about this particular collection, the collection of Victor Keane, our own collection, and some new thinking about how we present that and take that to our audiences and enthusiasts. So please check out our Intersect Chicago page, which has more about Intuit and outsider art.
Thanks, Deb.
Thanks, Alison.
Thanks, Deb and Allison. This was wonderful, and Lisa from earlier. And thank you all for joining. As Deb mentioned, all of the recordings will be live on our site within the next few days. And I really appreciate your partnership. Thanks again.
Thanks, Becca.
Bye.
Bye.